Bartholomew Town, brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, Half Street Group, and Newport Film.
Bartholomew Town.
All right, so coming up in September, actually September 25th through 26th at Bryant University at the Chafee Center for International Business. It's the Global Trade Summit. Registration is now open for this event. It's described as New England's premier international business event. And let me just give you a bit of an overview here before we get into the conversation today. And I'm reading from a press release here. Bryant University's John H. Chafee Center for International Business is pleased to announce that registration is now open for the 2025 Global Trade Summit, taking place September 25th through 26th. Yeah, I realize that's basically what I just said a second ago. But this is a two-day event, and it's a premier gathering for business leaders, government officials, academics, entrepreneurs, and others who are looking to explore global trade trends, emerging technologies, and new market opportunities. This is definitely right up my alley, and I plan to be there for this event, and maybe you, the listener, will as well. Again, we'll post that registration link. Our guest today, Jason Kelly, the Executive Director of the Chafee Center for International Business at Bryant. Jason, thanks so much for your time.
Bill, thanks for having me. Great to be on the show.
All right, a real pleasure. This is great news at a time where international trade as a whole, business on any level, inclusive of the hyper-local, but expanding all the way to the global sector. It's a wild moment. There's a lot of shifting trends. There's a lot of new alliances, uncertainty, but also a ton of opportunity, and especially for Rhode Island. So let's dig into the on-the-ground specifics. For anybody who doesn't know, let's talk about, actually, let me ask a basic question, because I still think that there's people out there, they hear Bryant, they think of Bryant College, they think of kind of back in the day. You've done a great job of branding and making it well known that it is, in fact, and it has been for some time, a university. But just talk about the environment at Bryant right now for anybody who has never driven north of, one says 146. That's either where they turn around or dissolve into space because they just don't know about Northern Rhode Island.
Yeah, Bryant University is a state treasure, I have to say. I'm new at the Chafee Center as director. I've been here for 8 months, and when I was in the private sector, my company, we often worked with Bryant University on open innovation initiatives. It's just really important, in this changing, world, that companies look outward to find innovation, and higher ed is a great place to do that. And Bryant's reputation is skyrocketing. Just this morning in LinkedIn's first poll on universities, I think we were number 38, and I think number 4 on internships. And U.S. News has talked about top 1% for return on investment. So being at Bryant University makes my job easier because of the reputation of the school. And, when I was in the private sector, I worked with many different universities and had a lot of success with URI and Brown. But I'd have to say that the ethos at Bryant, being a business school, was just perfectly aligned with knowing how to work with the private sector. So there's something special here.
Yeah. All right. Let's overview what by the way, I completely agree with that. It is definitely a treasure, and it's something that when we talk about our ecosystem, I mean, you can make the argument that people became more aware of Bryant even through the success of the men's basketball program over the last couple of years, that put all of a sudden, it was like, oh, wait a minute, we have 4 Division I teams in Rhode Island, a certain segment of people anyway. That may have helped with awareness, but if you're in the know, you know that what's happening at Bryant is pretty special, and it's inclusive of what's happening with what we're discussing today. The John H. Chafee Center at Bryant, give us an overview of what that's all about.
Yeah, so we have something very innovative in Rhode Island, and it's been here for decades, and it's the fact that we are the only state where the responsibility of trade promotion is domiciled in a private university. And it's really the intersection of higher ed and economic development and innovation. So, this is a nice tee-up to many people that know Bryant University, know World Trade Day. So for over 4 decades, Bryant has had World Trade Day in May, which has been a one-day event. I participated in it several years and actually was the co-chair of the committee for a couple of years. And that event really was a celebration, I think, of the export community here of Bryant. Prior to me coming in, I think Bryant leadership realized it was an opportunity to grow on that world trade opportunity. And so I inherited this really good idea that the World Trade Day would be rebranded as the Global Trade Summit, and it would happen at the end of September. A big part of that was that in May, the students weren't here, and we want to leverage the assets of students. We also wanted to make it a two-day event. I think that the committee and Bryant leadership at Commerce, I think they saw an opportunity to make it more of a C-suite event. And then finally, Bryant has a mission to not only support trade expansion, but also to promote FDI, foreign direct investment. So that primary responsibility lies with Commerce, and Bryant, we support it by things like the Global Trade Summit. So this year, we're attracting potential investors from several countries to come and see what Rhode Island has to offer as an investment destination.
Yeah. And by the way, that is something that is shifting I've now used that word several times, but it's accurate. The picture is shifting rapidly, and Rhode Island is uniquely positioned to be both on a deliverer and a receiver end of trade in a unique way in a lot of super sectors, not just the blue economy, which is where a lot of our focus goes. So what can people expect if they register for this and they turn up? What can people expect based on what you just kind of laid out there as the mission of this Global Trade Summit?
Sure. Well, the event isn't an FDI event, but building on the FDI, I'll just say that the way that we're looking at it is we want to highlight three of Rhode Island's most robust clusters, hubs, and that is the blue economy, as you mentioned, life science, and food. So there will be sessions that will be curated by the leaders in those sectors. So the life science hub, Commerce Rhode Island, will work on the blue economy, food export on that side. So I think for people wanting to learn more about our clusters, opportunities to sell here, opportunities to purchase, our products, you look at life science, for example, there's an explosion in immunological exports of like advanced medical devices. And so that's, as Chafee looks at trade, life science also has that lens for us to look into.
Yeah.
So, burying the lead is this incredibly volatile, changing, world trade order that we have. And what better a place to be at a higher academic university that specializes in supply chain and trade. And so we're bringing, thought leaders from all over to discuss this. So we'll have a panel of representatives from countries that have been impacted by this. So we'll have the Consul General from Canada and from the UK and from other countries as well that we're finalizing. We'll have Rhode Island's full congressional delegation discussing Washington on one day. Naturally, we have to talk about AI, and Bryant is investing millions in looking at being a leader in AI. And at the Chafee Center, we're looking at really interesting ways to activate our training in new ways using AI. And we've got a phenomenal panel of experts from IBM and otherwise. Lori White from the Chamber has shown a lot of leadership in this area. She'll be moderating that panel. We're so excited about that. Keynotes, James Keyes. One thing that I'm most excited about, if you look at, well, first of all, James Keyes, if you know anything about him, he's really an interesting man, a Renaissance man, artist, athlete, investor, philanthropist, musician. And he has guided companies as CEO like 7-Eleven and Blockbuster Video through incredible change. And so at this inflection point, I think as things change in the world economy, particularly in trade, I think his message is going to be very interesting. He's a fantastic speaker. He's just written a book, Education and Freedom, and it's just so appropriate for, I think, an event being held at a distinguished higher ed institution, that the keynote speaker is going to be able to weave in important messages on education and success.
Yeah.
Another keynote, perhaps my favorite, is we're having the Regent Craft. I think one of Rhode Island's most exciting companies. Regent is an electric sea glider company that is, came in 2020. I was on the Commerce Board when that first came in, and through support from the state and all the assets that we have in the blue economy, our ecosystem, our workforce, our testing facilities, facilitated Regent to come. Now they've got $9 billion of order book. So, as people look at potential clients, potential new supply chains, potential opportunities to invest, I think hearing the story about Regent Craft is going to be very interesting for our participants.
No doubt. And I think the Regent Craft deserves even just a pause for a second, because it showcases, first of all, Regent's amazing. Second of all, it showcases, I wouldn't even call it an emerging sector. I would call it a contemporary and rapidly expanding sector of, as you say, with the sea gliders. I just think broadly speaking, we can talk about drones and we can talk about payload delivery as a really important super sector that's expanding, and Regent playing into that to at least a certain extent. And whoever may be able to bring their own insights in that autonomous lane, so to speak, to a discussion. It's so contemporary and so relevant, something Rhode Island can shine on. I wonder.
Well, if I could just say that, we at Chafee, prior to me coming here, when Regent was in a more nascent stage, the team at Chafee took them on trade missions using STEP funding, the State Trade Expansion Program started by former President Obama back in, I think, 2011. So, a big part of what the Chafee Center does is administer the program, and Regent was a participant in that. So we're proud to play even a small role in their origin story for sure. And you look at Narragansett Bay as really, in my mind, the living ocean, the jewel and the crown of our blue economy. Everything that Commerce is doing now with the Ocean Tech Hub and looking at putting together, testing and protocol facilities. There's been a lot of interesting activity with undersea companies that are leading the way to creating a vision for a smart bay, the most measured bay in the world. And if there's one thing that our last four governors can agree on is the blue economy, and if it has to do with the ocean, we believe we can do it. So I'm excited that will play a role in our event.
This is the Global Trade Summit coming up at Bryant at the Chafee Center, September 25th through 26th. Global-Trade-Summit- I'm reading this incorrect. I'm going to start. I'm going to do the global-trade-summit.bryant.edu. All right, I'm going to say it again. Global-trade-summit.bryant.edu. Or you can just Google it and find, hopefully, the registration link to be a part of this. It's $250 for the entire 2-day event. And obviously a tremendous opportunity from a networking standpoint, but also from an educational standpoint, which leads me to the question that I think it's always on my mind with this kind of stuff. Rhode Island, there's so much happening. I'm optimistic about Rhode Island. I'm also realistic about Rhode Island. And I know that I'm realistic about any sort of transition in a municipality and on a statewide basis to be best positioned to grow as a leader in global trade, even really interstate trade. So what can anybody attending this event who's kind of looking at things through the lens of how do we best position Rhode Island? How do we best position Providence as a hub for global trade, whether that means the importing and housing of humans that would be involved in different sectors, or just the actual landscape we're not going to turn Providence or the state into a utopian 15-minute city overnight, but we certainly could do that in a couple of decades if we really work towards it. What do you need to do that? You need the anchor of industry, and we've got three that you've just identified right here. There may be even a couple of others. So what do you think this says about Rhode Island's future for those naysayers who would basically just spend their day moaning and groaning and talking about how they can't wait to move to Florida?
Well, what again, just to go back to the growing clusters, if you look at the blue economy, if you look at life science, if you look at the food economy, we really punch above our weight. And I think when you think in this region about clusters, whether it's blue economy, it's URI or Roger Williams, if it's life science, it's Brown, if it's robotics, it's MIT. We like to think that we're planting the flag at Bryant for an international business cluster. And so if you are, at this intersection of higher ed and economic development and innovation, through this tool and other tools, we just look forward to being the hub that brings together, whether it be training or matchmaking or education, other opportunities for us to amplify, all the great things that are happening in Rhode Island. And look, the United States is 26% of the global economy. That's incredible, and everybody wants to sell to us. But at the same time, the global market is the rest of the 75%. So that offers so many opportunities for Rhode Island. We're trading a lot with Canada. There's a lot of discussion among economic development folks now that while, yes, on the federal level, there's a lot of tension between Canada and the U.S., there's a lot of great things happening on the state level, including Rhode Island and working with provinces. And I think that's one Canadian official recently said to me, mom and dad are fighting, but the kids are getting along great. So there's a lot of things that are happening, and we look forward to amplifying the existing relationships like the UK, like Ireland, Scandinavia, and the Dominican Republic, which is a growing important part of trade. We're hoping to bring some delegates from the Dominican Republic, looking at smart ports and some other aligning interests.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to explore, and I look forward to seeing, how international this thing gets, even not just this year, but as it moves into the future. And I think connecting Rhode Island with aligned ports of entry, aligned industries throughout the world that's it. That's the magic button that I think a lot of us are hoping that one company is going to move into Providence and that's going to transform industry here. It's not going to be that. It's going to be clusters being elevated bit by bit. Last question. If your business, if you're listening to this right now, if you have a business and you want to exhibit or kind of get involved on the back end of things, is there still an opportunity to do that?
There is. We have some room left. You can find all of that information on the website, for sure. Thank you for mentioning that. And I also want to mention that the day before, on the Wednesday, the 24th, we're hosting visits around Rhode Island, going to Quonset, going to Unity Park in Bristol, going to Newport. Because we have an international delegation coming in, and we want to invite our Rhode Island folks as well to participate if there's any interest in, making those visits. And one last thing, if you're a Rhode Island business, one thing that the Chafee Center excels in is matchmaking. So, if you want to come to the conference, engage with us, and if there are people that you want to meet, we'll make that happen during the time when you're here, whether it's Rhode Island companies coming from the region or international. Bill, thank you so much for having me, and I hope this facilitates some interest in this new opportunity, this new type of event for Rhode Island.
I think it will. I like that matchmaking component. It's like an in-person, real-life dating app for people in terms of their industrial interests. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. The networking component is going to be so fundamental to this, obviously. Hey, Jason, thanks so much for your time. Jason Kelly, Chafee Center up there at Bryant University, and Global Trade Summit's coming up. This is we spent a lot of time talking about this on the podcast in different ways. Sparking industry, sparking economic development, sparking even morale boosting opportunities. I would encourage anyone who is able to attend this event, and we'll see you there.
All right. Thanks again, Bill.
Bartholomew Town is a truly independent news organization, accredited by Lion, the leading consortium of independent news providers in the country. And we certainly thank our sponsors, Newport Film, the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, Half Street Group, and many others who have helped sustain our journalism. And we also thank our listeners who have supported us at patreon.com/BartholomewTown, or you can click the little heart wherever you're listening right now. For as little as $3 per month, you too can help sustain independent journalism in Rhode Island.